Hey everyone, my name is Chris, and this is the C&C Board Game Factory.
And I am Count Dabula, also known as Cam, uh, 2016's number one guy.
2016's number one guy.
Dabbing on the haters.
Do people still dab? Did people ever dab? That's my question.
I think people dabbed. I think that for a while, dabbing was much less ironic.
Okay, because I
But like,
don't know, to tell you the
I
truth.
think so. Here's what's up. I think that there was a wave between 2015 and I want to say 2018 probably where little kids, like little boys, were like the tastemakers. Like I think that as far as like internet trends and stuff, like I think it's like 16 to 18 year olds kind of control what's cool on the internet. But I think for a little bit, like back before YouTube started demonetizing like everything, um, like the people who were making the most money were these like Jake Paul type people and these like I don't know
I don't know what that is.
like Johnson family pranks and like toy and maybe that's still huge, but like I think for a little bit, little boy views like were the unstoppable force, and so I think like these 9-year-olds were like making the tastemakers with like the fidget spinners and the dabs and stuff.
Oh, no, okay. So you're not saying they're the content makers, but they were the content digesters, and whatever they
That's what
clicked on.
I'm saying. Like
Okay,
for some, like all of the people who are like the industry were like, oh, the little boy view is what we're going for.
I mean John Cena, right? Like who does wrestling appeal to?
Yeah, little boys.
Primarily, yeah. Like I remember being an 8-year-old kid and like loving wrestling.
Yeah.
So, all
But
right.
like I think kid views are still important. You know, like restaurants have kids menus. Like the kids creators are still making like tons of money. But I don't think that like for some reason like I think that like kid culture also got like mainstream for like a very short window, whereas like normally kid culture doesn't. Like I think our culture is skewing younger because of the internet. Like I think that probably 50 years ago people our age, and you're a little younger than me, like you're still in the golden demographic because you're under 35. I'm just over 35.
Okay.
Like, I'm just beginning to be irrelevant for the rest of my life.
Perfect. Yeah.
But
The way
I
it should be,
think,
Cam.
yeah, I think probably 50 years ago, um, like your relevance period was like 32 to like 60 because the internet didn't exist and who had money,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Back then you didn't have to like if your kid wanted something you would get it for him or you wouldn't, you know. But now like with the ads and like the people being like you should do this for your kids like that's why young people make the trends now.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
I
and
wasn't
yeah,
alive years ago so I don't know this firsthand, but that's my hunch.
sure. I mean, when you were a 9-year-old, you didn't control the television remote control like your
I did
parents did.
mornings when my dad wasn't watching TV, or like my mom. Like my parents didn't watch a lot of TV anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, you better believe that if it's like 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night and we happen to be watching something, we're not watching what I want to watch. We're watching what my parents want to watch. And then it's like if I don't want to watch it, if it's like the news, then yeah, I can go play with Legos or whatever.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And kids these days can just pull up their phone or their tablet
Yeah,
or their.
other which is that's a weird thing and I really like that. We really should just do a podcast where we just talk about popular culture because we always do at the beginning of this thing. But it's really hard because like I and you have a kid who is 5,
5. Yep.
5, and so you're probably just getting into those years. But like as a huge screen nerd, um, like it's really kind of hard for me to determine what like if and when my wife and I have some kids, like what's like when do the screens come out? because in one hand, like I was a video game and screen obsessed kid, and my parents recognized this and they were like, "No, we're not having that stuff in our house."
Mm.
I don't know if that changed my development to be like, this is a scarce commodity. So when you have the option to do this, do it as much as you can for as long as you can, forsaking all other activities. Because I still kind of have that like video game addiction in me where it's like, oh, I have the whole day free. Guess I'll go sit in front of a TV screen and play video games all day. I mean,
Right.
I like to hang out, and if somebody wants to hang out, I do that because that's fun. Or but like if it's just like I got an errand and a job at the house to do, and I just end up putting it off, and then it's like, oh, I didn't do either of those things. So part of me is like, well, I don't want my kids to be like that, so they got to have like something. But like a lot of my friends who had like unlimited screen privileges as kids just weren't that interested in that stuff, and I don't know if that's because of their personalities or it's because it's like this isn't special. But then some of the kids who had unlimited screen privileges are like still to this day like far more like screened out than me,
Right.
So I don't know. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Because you actually have a kid who's probably like getting into that screen area of life.
Right. Yeah. We've always been fairly limited. We never said like no screen time, but we would do like half-hour limits a day when she was younger, and when she was especially under the age of like 2, 3, never let her like play with a phone or anything. That's such an easy distraction. You sit in a church pew, and your toddler is like throwing a fit, and someone's trying to listen to the boring old guy or me up there at the pulpit like talking, and the easy solution is to hand the kid the phone.
Say boring old guy or me as though you're not.
I am an exciting old guy when I speak in church. I quote The Simpsons over the pulpit, my friends. I do that almost every time I get to speak.
Dude, do you see how good my Trump thing was there? Because I pushed my head forward, my hands look really tiny. All right.
So anyway, yeah. So we've just always tried to avoid it whenever possible. And you know what one of our daughter's favorite toys is right now?
What's that?
Sticks.
Sticks, cool.
Sticks, leaves, dirt. Like, I'm very happy with that. I have no idea. Like, my general viewpoint on parenting is that so much of it is in the genetics, and so I don't know truly how much good parenting will overcome anything, but I do know that bad parenting can lead to problems, regardless of genetics.
Yeah, I think that you're not going to find a lot of like super maladjusted people who had good parents. Like really like psychopaths. You know what I mean? But like, there's all sorts of like people who don't do the right thing in life that had very good parents. I think most of the time when you learn about like somebody who murdered like 50 people, you have either like a absence of good parenting or you have like over coddling.
Right.
But where the person can just be a narcissist and then like think that the world revolves around them, which I think leads to sociopathic tendencies, and then if you get a little psychopathic in there, and then that's when. But I think you're probably right with the screen thing. But I think you got to have some, if that's what the kid wants to do. Otherwise, you end up like me, and it's like, because like, I think the first like video game screen in my house arrived when I was like 15, and at that point, it's like, I already associated that kind of like playing video games as like something that I want to be able to do more of, But I also personally, genetically, I think I have that manipulation and vegetation fascination,
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I think that's really the kicker right there, is regardless of whether your parents said, hey, have a lot of screen time, or hey, have very little, I don't think that would change any genetic predispositions to the fact that you have free time and you would rather do something a little bit more relaxing and vegetative. I don't know if that would really change that part of it. And so that's kind of my view, is that like good parents, like when good parents try and do good parenting things and their kids have quirks to them, yeah, you know, that kid, like everybody has quirks to them. There's no quirkless person. But yeah, overbearingness can lead to, can more likely lead to issues. I think this is just kind of my general viewpoint of parenting. Try and do the right thing. If something happens, meh, you just screwed up a human life. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, every parent, I think, downloads. Like, I think that for every parent where somebody grows up and goes, man, my parents were right about so much. I think there's probably a kid who grows up and goes, man, my parents just spewed lies, and it's insane that they believe what they do. And I think that's just personal. But yeah, also like I'm just kind of a procrastinator, and I don't think that my love of video games has anything to do with that. Like I think if I quit video games,
You'd find other things to procrastinate about.
I would still find something else. I'd be like, boy, I was reading this novel, and oh man, you got to read this novel series. Oh, it's crazy.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing, is people who want to seek leisure and have a little bit more of that escapism and that fun that comes from a video game or from a book or from board games.
Oh yeah.
We're going to find that time for that. We're going to make the time for that. And it doesn't matter if that's, if you lived in Victorian England, yeah, it would probably be an armchair adventurer by reading the new, Jules Verne novel and, this young and up-and-coming fellow named Charles Dickens or whatever it may be, right? People literally said that people were literally scared of books when they started to become more mainstream as publishing capabilities became more common, and people said, "Oh, people get to spend all the day just reading." How terrible is that going to be for society? And I don't know.
It is crazy to me that like tabletop gaming like didn't evolve much earlier than it did. Like that it took until the 1970s for somebody to like come up with like Dungeons and Dragons. Because like I can't imagine, like, to me, like a world without like the ability to like exist in a world but like make the choices,
Sure.
like not existing, that seems so crazy that like until really, between like the late 70s with like video games beginning and Dungeons and Dragons beginning and like the other like pseudo role-playing games of just before Dungeons and Dragons, like it's crazy that people were content to be like, no, I just want to see what Haas is going to do on Bonanza, or I just want to see what Tom Thumb is going to get himself into, or like, yeah, just it would be cool if Sophocles could just tell me about what who's Sophocles? Did he do? I want to say Pythagoras, but that's not the guy. Who's Oedipus? Is Sophocles, right?
I don't remember offhand.
And yeah, he did like all those tragedies. But it's crazy that like that there wasn't like, and then like the other thing is like professional sports too. Like it's crazy that there weren't like more. Maybe there were, and I just don't know about, but like more like professional sports leagues where people would like go watch athletes like play a game that wasn't extremely violent, so that they could play it often.
So I don't know much about the history of sports, but you bring up an interesting point, Cam, that I think of D&D as kind of an older thing, but I tend to think of Pong and video games in general, I should say, as slightly part of this like newer phase of history, so to speak. I maybe it's the association of video games are a newer thing and tabletop type stuff is an older school type thing. And I've never thought of this like in terms of the contemporary, but 1972 Pong was invented. 1974 D&D was invented.
Yeah.
Like I never think of those as really close to each other. And yeah, so before that, we just
I
had
mean,
a lot
well,
less
so
leisure.
wargaming existed quite a while before that. In fact, who was it? Which author was it that had his own war game published, or maybe not published, but that he worked on
Yeah,
his
H.G.
whole?
Wells.
Yeah, H.G. Wells, right?
Or no,
And so,
wow, I always confuse it. Yeah, it's H.G. Wells was the
yeah,
author. Um,
of Tiny Wars, I think is what it was called, or Little Wars.
I'm going to pull up the full name because it's fantastic. Uh, H.G. Wells. The full title of it is uh sorry. Oh my gosh, where is it? Continue with your point. I'm going to bring up the full name here in a
Oh
second.
no, well, I mean, I don't think like so, but I mean, games were a thing, but the fact that they were like not like thoughtful games didn't exist on a greater level, and self insertion games didn't exist on a greater level until recently is either a testament to how little free time people over the age of 10 had throughout the entirety of history, or like how short and destitute lives were, or like it just shows a giant shift in the way people think about fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And I have to think that like it's probably a little of both.
I would assume so. Yeah, with more relative wealth and comfort comes more ability for leisure time and everything. And uh, if you were a noble person that had the leisure time, then you were doing different leisurely activities, things that were more befitting of a noble person, right? Whereas tabletop gaming and all that type of stuff is something that a peasant can do in their free
Right.
time. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be very rich, relatively speaking, to own a checkers set or dig some holes in the ground to play Mancala, and like those types of things. And we see just an extension of that. Yeah, we see an
Yeah.
extension of that in that. Yeah, since the '60s, '70s, post World War II, relative economic boom for your average American and your average person around the world. Yeah, just the increase of leisure time coming about the same time as the increase of technologies to allow it.
Well, that's the crazy thing too, and I know like this has been a good C&C Board Game Factory episode, honestly, already. But that the crazy thing is, people talk about how terrible life is now. Like you see all these people on social media being like, "I can't believe this is happening," and like it's so terrible to be us in this society these days. And it's like, hey man, you used a small inexpensive piece of technology to communicate something to the entire world for free, um, in a matter of milliseconds. Like, and you're gonna go home and eat whatever you want and sleep in a comfortable bed with like hot water and meanwhile, like 150 years ago, like people like it's still in this world, people can own people, and then like you go back 100 years before that, and like the dudes are like chopping each other's heads off to be king of a country for like a week. They're like, then they'll take like every guy in a town, give them like a long pointy stick, and they'll shove them at each other. And then you go like back like 100 years past that, everybody's like dying of a plague. Meanwhile, there's like one guy who's like laying on like a pillow on like a marble slab, like just being fed grapes by naked women, and like and then like you're complaining about how little freedom we have. Like, can you imagine if they truly tried to take away some of like the basic freedoms we have? I mean, it just wouldn't. We just wouldn't allow it.
Sure.
I
I
mean,
mean,
wrong with that, but
yeah.
um,
I mean, and that's the thing is that like research into this history of violence shows that this is the most peaceful time that the world has experienced ever by
oh
a
yeah,
large measure. And it's not to, I mean, and of course, I think it goes without saying, like, that doesn't mean actual atrocities that happen now are like, well, that's fine, statistically speaking. This is the least violent. No. Let's go make sure people aren't, destroying other people and violating actual, you know, rights and human rights
Well,
and all that stuff.
I'm not a political scientist, but everybody that I know on social media seems to think that if their person in power is in charge, that like things are going to be good. And it's like you have the whole thing twisted. Like we're not going to debate morality, but basically, powerful people exploit less powerful people up to the point where less powerful people disallow it. And like we are disallowing powerful people to have their way, like at a S tier level, and obviously it can get better. But like, let's just step back for a moment and maybe try to like be thankful for the fact that what you call, oppression is like basically freedom to do whatever you want by any other era standards.
Right. We can do better, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of people who confuse mild inconvenience with oppression.
yeah,
And
or they confuse a small percentage of people's antagonism as the most threatening, heinous behavior in history. And I'm not discounting any person's struggle, especially because I come from a point of what everybody would consider privilege. And that's fine. And I would admit that my life has been pretty easy. Uh, but I think that's one of the ways that like modern society has a hard time uniting, because I think every person's experience is so individually focused because it can be.
I mean, some people would argue that's the downside of increased leisure, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Is yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a philosophical. It's an interesting discussion that I think we've said. I
Yeah,
think
I mean, at that point, I realized what I was saying like starting to sound like borderline hateful by some people's interpretation of speech. Um, but no, like I really want everybody to be as free and as happy and as stress free as possible, and that includes every single person. Um, but it's like sometimes it's like, whoa, dude, like life is pretty ripping right about now, despite the fact that we all have to stay indoors, and that like the most recent president has probably been the one that we wanted the least. So
before we sally forth any more in that direction, I did pull up the full name of H.G. Wells's War
oh
Games.
good.
So
Okay, sorry for I have the tendency to get all social commentary on here. I don't know. I think it's just because you're always an interesting person to talk to about that.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm a good listener, and I have some thoughts. I have a brain. I use it to discuss
Yeah, one of these
things.
be like shut up, like it's time to get into the podcast.
So this is the name of H.G. Wells'. So H.G. Wells published the first, or he helped design the first like commercially available war game. That was called Little Wars: a game for boys from 12 years of age to 150, and for that more intelligent sort of girl who likes boys' games and books.
Whoa, more intelligent sort of girl liking the boy stuff. I see.
I will make this point about it. By today's standards, that is an incredibly sexist thing to title your game. That is a very sexist mindset to have. But for H.G. Wells, this game published in what was like 1913, that was, for its time, a progressive thing to say.
Like a
I
very
can only imagine.
thing. Like, hey, this is for girls too. Like, if you're into this kind of stuff.
Yeah, like
Uh,
the
yeah.
the relativity of how progressive one is absolutely just depends on what period of time you're in. And so I find that title hilarious, but also instructive. That like girls can play war games too. You know what I mean? It's and for for anyone that says like, oh, do girls even like RPGs? Do girls play D&Ds and whatnot? Like literally, H.G. Wells put that in his title. So there you go.
Well, and this, I mean, this is a truth too. Like, what makes I think it a little less offensive is I think even by today's standards, if you subscribe to that, there are like slight differences between men and women, which used to not be a challenging thing to say, but now it really is. I I think that like boys like developmentally tend to enjoy pugnacious activity, and like the whole concept of this thing is it's like cannons and soldiers like killing each other on a little playing field, and like I still think that the idea of combat and like conflict, like physical conflict, doesn't really appeal to like most little girls, you know. Um,
Yeah, it's worded obviously poorly when it says that more intelligent sort of
yeah,
girl.
that's what would be very very offensive, I think, by today's standards. But like, I don't think it's like I guess these days like there's no boy toys and girl toys. Like I don't think Legos and adventure stuff doesn't appeal to both sexes. I think little girls love swashbuckling stuff just as much as little boys do.
Hmm.
But I think like the concept of like war and army men and like spraying each other with bullets and like stabbing each other with bayonets, like I think that's still kind of a male thing, you know. But like sword fights and dungeons and like casting spells and like I think that appeals to humans, you know.
I think so. It's that sense of adventure, it's a sense of doing something different, and
Yeah.
uh, so anyway, yeah, we've had probably the longest of non-board game
But we
designing.
talked about game design and like the evolution of games today, which is
Yeah,
like I truly we didn't do a lot to work on Colored Cube Factory in the last couple of weeks. I've had some work stuff, and I think you've been busy with a few things here
applying
too.
for work stuff, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
miserable. Yeah.
But you know, we have a long election going on as of the recording of this too, and it hasn't gotten me particularly stressed out. But like this week with daylight savings, also has just kind of made me feel like there's not a whole lot of time in the day.
Why is that still a thing, man? Like,
So I agree with you there. I think every like I think the only so everybody like complains about the electoral college. Like most people like hate that. I think more people hate daylight savings. So let's start with that. You know?
let's start making some changes that really affect people, especially. Oh, here's a word of warning for you, Cam. As you
Yeah.
one day have a kid, yeah, screens and all that stuff will be like a thing that you are concerned and worried about. Daylight savings time, you will hate even more, because
Boy.
when you know that you gained an extra hour of sleep, kids don't know that.
Yeah.
They just get up and they're just like, hey, it's time to it's time to run around the house and make noise or whatever. Our kid's relatively quiet. We're very lucky that way. I do not for a second think that I have it worse off than most other parents, but still, like our kid will just like hang outside of our door and be like, Mom, Dad, it's Mom, and we're like, oh no, go to sleep. Like this is almost worse. Like, go jump on the roof or something. But it's so anyway. Yeah, daylight savings time. I am against it, and I am not afraid to say that. I think that's a good end of our social commentary for now. Cam, I did do one thing with
Yeah.
Colored Cube Factory though that I wanted to show
Let's
you.
talk about it. Okay, to end off our podcast, here we go. Or I
Okay,
guess the podcast.
I'm going to share my screen with you. So I put together this tabletop sim mod, or so yeah, I've been working in Tabletop Simulator, obviously. So I had a few thoughts. Right, one thing was
Ooh, you did do some stuff. I
yeah. So
like
so one thing was we talked about this board layout, right?
yeah the
Of
flow chart. Love.
yeah, exactly. Trying to kind of flowchart it. So obviously, moving left to right is the most sensible, I would assume. So you have
Yeah.
whatever. Oh gosh, I didn't lock this down. Ooh, L for lock. Now I won't pick up the whole board. So
Hey, don't say what your commands are set to. People might be able to dox you with that sort of information.
so anyway, yeah. So like you have your deliveries here that come in. Or let's grab some smashers. Duplicator. Boom. Right. So anyway,
Yeah.
this is what I'm thinking here. And the board I don't think is a very good size because it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think we need to worry about that right now. Like, I can kind of already see where you're going with this. So, like, this is exactly kind of what we talked about in the last episode. And I think that, a graphic designer can make it look more like a factory while doing that. of course, we've been talking about this game having no theme whatsoever.
Yes.
Um, this is like perfect because it totally encapsulates, I think, what we both sort of think is a good flowchart. But go ahead because for the people watching, why don't you explain kind of what's going on here?
Sure. So, I mean, assuming that this is what it looks like, right? So, at this, you do your worker placement turn, you buy your stuff, you get your money, and you get your cubes, or whatever. All the cubes that you earn throughout the round go here into your deliveries area. This is your like unloading dock, basically. Stuff comes in. If you have stuff in storage, if you have sufficient cartage, you can also move it up along, and then all of the stuff will flowchart over into your factory floor, and now you can figure out what you want to do with it. So, green. I want to duplicate my green, so I turn this into 2 greens when I run it through the duplicator. I want to smash these 2 white cubes together. They'll come out as a red cube, right?
Yeah.
And so I get myself an extra green. I turn 2 whites into a red cube.
Lock
Well,
that smasher, baby.
yeah, I probably should just lock these things down once they're on there. Okay. So, yeah, so this is kind of the flowchart. And these things haven't really run through any machines. But, boom. So now this is what you have to work with for the round. And we talked about these 3 branching paths, right? If I've got a contract card, sitting over here on the side, cool. I can complete this contract, right? So I got my 2 greens, yellow and a red. So boom, I would complete that contract. That's worth 15 points. Get my $5 or whatever. And then with the leftover cubes, you can decide what you want to do with them. You can either move them into storage so that you can run it through the factory next time, or you can go ahead and sell it to the market, and that's just where you get instant dollars for whatever it may be. So I think that this is like a decent layout of what we talked about, what kind of is going to be the goal of the factory,
Yeah.
right?
Very much so. I love it. The one thing I think is still kind of clunky that maybe this is like Cam, remember this. I think that cube transportation must be an element of the game. And the one thing I really want like think about is like how can we make it an element of the game that fits and is thoughtful? Because like in your state, I like the idea that like you have to have the carts to move the cubes.
Mm-hmm.
But like when it's pasted on here, it becomes kind of clear that like you're really just making a 1-step process, a 2-step process. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, you have to pay for the storage, and then you have to pay for the ability to use everything in your storage. Otherwise, it just stays there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't hate. Like that's the way it works in real life, right? You know, you can't just carry stuff for free. You gotta pay somebody to do it. But like the guy who wants to make the efficient game in me goes like, okay, well, where could we put this aspect of the game that made it more interesting? Because like in this, and I think this is probably. I probably am the one who was like, no, we should put the carts there last time because you know me, like I am a huge hypocrite. But like seeing it on a board makes me think like, where could those carts go where it would make even more strategic sense?
Okay, so are you thinking that when you have leftover cubes in your factory floor, that you'd have to have carts in order to be able to move them into storage?
I sort of think that because we talked about the concept of like delivery trucks too.
Yeah.
And like you know, I think they're kind of like an output thing where it's like, hey, you don't need to get carts to get stuff into the factory, but like when you're sending stuff out of the factory for contracts, for like sending stuff to the market, like you're gonna lose some of your income if you have to hire extra help to do that.
Right.
And I don't think you punish like the quick markets, but I think you limit the contracts maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly, but I think I think it's fine where it's at. But I think you and I are both on the same page where we're like, we don't want a game that's fine. We want a game that's really, really thoughtful and good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think this is a really good idea, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that my initial thought is going to be a lot more critical on a game we're creating than a game I'm just playing of somebody else's.
Right.
Um, and part of me thinks that like if I were playing the game, I might not be able to verbalize it because I'm dumb, but I might find that there was a disconnect in fun when I had to do two separate actions to complete one objective. You know what I'm saying?
The two separate actions being what? Help me understand
Uh,
just that last part.
Collecting storage and collecting carts just to move stuff from my storage into the factory floor. Um, but maybe it makes sense. But like because you don't end up using all of your cubes every round anyway. Like just like we saw,
Mm-hmm.
you know, everything from the deliveries comes onto the floor, but not all of it gets used. So maybe you leave some stuff in the storage, and you only send back. You might think you want something for later. It's not going to go out with your carts this round. So, ultimately, it's like it could be a really neat thing in practice, and I'm just theoretically knocking it. So I wouldn't say let's make any big changes. I'm happy with I really am happy with what you've done here.
Okay.
But I think it's something to think about as we start structuring because I don't want to overcomplicate things. I don't think we should have two different, currencies, as it were, for cube movement, and two different areas to worry about, like how many. Like I think we should have carts or trucks, not both, right?
Sure.
But I guess that's. I think you're really good at like visualizing ideas and like turning them into something concrete. I don't think I'm very good at that. I do think I'm good at like thinking about like, what works well.
What'll end up being fun? Yeah.
Yeah. So I may be complaining to like really next week I should just be like, hey Chris, I love what you've done here. What if we did that? And I think we've already made some good decisions based on you visualizing something well and me going like, what if we flipped it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts? Because I'm just rambling at this point.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question of should you have a resource here like carts so that you have to manage your storage or whatever, or would it be more interesting to have a resource over on the exit side, like delivery trucks or something maybe? Because I remember we had a discussion about delivery trucks, and then we were unsure if it was going to turn into something too big or too unwieldy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think my thought on it is that you're more likely to run cubes through your factory a few times than necessarily complete a contract every turn, as a guess, right? And so I think that this carts might be more impactful as kind of this cycling through your storage back into your factory, but also it might be more interesting if it affects your delivery. Yeah, you had a thought?
Yeah, I know. I think that's true. And now that I'm thinking about it, like, have you played Barrage? That's what we're doing on the Board Boys tonight.
Oh no, I haven't played Barrage. I'm genuinely a little bit afraid to, because at Dice Tower West, like the last convention we went to before everything locked down, a friend of mine's like, "Oh, I love this game. I love this game." He's playing it at the table, like just a little bit further down the table from us. And at one point, someone made one move, and he like stood up from the table. He was so angry. He's like, "Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?" And he's like walking laps around the table, and he sits back down. He's like, "Okay, next turn."
That's okay. So first off, it is very easy to become frustrated early in that game when somebody makes a decision that because it's a competitive game.
Sure.
And it really is. But I've played a few times, and it's kind of a cam game. It's one of those games where everybody has their like what they're good at in games, and I'm pretty good at seeing a few moves ahead and like having contingency plans and like understanding like what aspects of a game are subject to change and what aspects of the game are concrete,
Hmm.
and knowing and then it's a worker placement thing and like knowing when to prioritize like what I have to do in order to complete my goals. Anyway, the game has kind of a similar feel to what we're doing, minus like the mean competition.
Okay.
Because it's about like pushing water down this pipeline and like turning that into energy. Anyway, like in that game, there you have contracts, and like I kind of have a similar vibe on it, where say the game lasts 5 rounds, you may complete a contract in the first round, you may not, but generally, like in the next couple rounds, you're probably going to complete a contract, maybe two if that's your focus, or you're doing smaller ones. But like by the last couple rounds of the game, you might complete 3 contracts or even 4 if they're like smaller ones. I kind of have that feeling about it, where it's gonna, because it's an engine builder, so it's gonna escalate, right?
Yeah.
So, um, finding that middle ground, because I don't think we're looking for like a Bunny Kingdom type thing where it's just like, you know, I think we're looking for like a, but it ends as soon as that curve starts to, hit, right? I think
Sure.
I think when I was younger and I played games, like I wish they were longer, because like as soon as my economy gets off the ground, the game's over. But like now, as a guy who thinks about games critically, like that's the point when you want to end a game, because the best determiner, I think, of who did the best building their engine is gonna be known that turn that the engine's all rev for the first time, truly,
Sure.
um, because if you let it go one more round, the game feels bloated at that point, right?
Whoever got their curve to start shooting up exponentially first will still be probably further ahead one round later, but now you have to play one extra
But
round of.
everybody, everything, and everybody scored like 500 points, and
Mhm.
so um, that's kind of what I think about when I think of like where should we put, because like to me the carts are the stopgap, right? They're like the, what do you call it, the choke point
Mhm.
of how much you can get in. But you have this deliveries area where like stuff just flows in. So do you flip it so that the carts control both the storage and the deliveries at that point? Why are you getting the deliveries if you don't have enough carts? And so that's kind of where my brain's going to be at for this next week, I think, is
Okay.
how to, because I think it's good that we have like a choke point that you have to figure out how to navigate, but where that should be, I think is a good question, right?
Cool. I dig it. I think that's a good point. Where
Anyway, thanks for letting me talk for 4 minutes again when I could have said something in 10 seconds.
so from what I think the takeaway is perhaps the choke point or the carts or trucks or whatever you want to call them could be uh, could be multi-purpose. So there's 3 branches. I'll switch back to the tabletop sim really quick. There's 3 branches of what it could be. When you finish all of your cubes, when you finish running all of your machines, they can either go straight up to the quick market where they'll sell for $1, $2, $3, $4 or whatever it is.
Right, just the thing where you don't honestly want to use most of your cubes there. Yeah,
Yeah, and you might need to shove a few out because you don't have enough carts. So
right.
because you're saying that carts, like each cart can maybe move 1 or 2 cubes or something like that, either to a contract or to storage. And so if you have say 3 of these bad boys, now I can move. Or let's do this, right? If this is my cubes, this is my pile of cubes at the end of the round, and I have got 2 carts built in this chunker down here. I can move all 4 of these onto my contract, but
Yeah,
now I don't have any carts left, so I can't store this one, and so I have to sell it to the market. Right? Like that.
right.
Okay.
Well, kind of a mechanism I sort of like, and it wouldn't be like maybe you have to do that. I think it would be like uh, you just like you get less reward if you didn't have the cart to do it.
Hmm.
But like that might make the game too complicated. I don't know, Chris. I think what you've done here is really really good. and I think that it shows that we were like kind of really on the same page after our last discussion
Good.
on
All
like
right.
the flow chart aspect of this, because like what you've done is pretty much exactly what I was envisioning. Um,
You know, it could be as simple as pay $1 for every cart that you don't have. Right? If I really want to store this red cube because I want to duplicate it for next turn, so I'm going to pay $1 and put it in storage. Right? Or I could sell it to the instant market or whatever for $2. So now I have a bit of a choice, at least.
and that's a really good idea. And one thing we could do too is I always think it's kind of fun when like your engine has like an effect before and after the main thing. Like we could utilize the carts as a storage to factory floor and also a factory floor to contract sort of thing too. Where like you get to use your carts 2 times around. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't really know if that would be something really worth doing. Who knows? I don't know, Chris.
Who knows? Yeah.
Here's what I'm saying. I like what we got, but that's like the aspect I'm going to be thinking about this week.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things I really love still, man. Like, I love the idea of being able to, boom, upgrade your Smasher. And so, like, yeah, just the fact that your factory floor can become upgraded, I think is going to be rad. Also, I took your suggestion, and I went ahead and I did this too, right? In that, remember, instead of putting actual individual employees out here onto the majorities area,
Yeah.
I think what it'll look like is this. So these are the bonuses for the rounds 1 and 2, right? Like these will get shuffled up, put out here onto the different spots, and so then then you reveal them, and so whoever wins the majority in the cube spot, right? Each worker gets one white cube, but then also whoever has the most gets to hire a level 1 employee, for example. So then they come over here and they hire the one that they want. We talked.
I have thoughts about that too.
Okay.
Really quick. I just play so many games by like Cassini and Luciani and Brasini and Gili and all those like Italian folks who work together. One of the things they do that I love is a lot of the different aspects of their game give bonuses that tie into other aspects of the game.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the idea of having that be like a higher level 1 employee, but there being another place to hire, like employees, but also maybe one of the contracts lets you hire an employee, and just like this sort of interconnectedness where it's like the game gets a little noodly.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds to me a lot like, and one of my favorites of theirs, Grand Austria Hotel.
Yeah.
Right, where, yeah, this lineup of cards, as is right now, is simply just, it's simply just turn in cubes for victory points and some dollars as well, right? So that's all I've put in there, and I think that can absolutely be toyed with, hey, complete this contract, get a free, one of these things. Get a free hire of an employee or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
not bad.
And the reason I think that makes it so fun is because when you have like a game that's like a rigid Euro, and it's not rigid if it gets noodly, right? You're turning that rigid block of ramen, and you get to drop it in that boiling water, and then it turns into noodles, But what it does with a game is when it gives you a reward that's not based in points or money, currency, usually, which are like currency is usually how you like what you spend with the amount of time you have in order to receive points. Then like you start getting to make those mental decisions of like, and every designer does this too, not just those guys. It's a big thing for Pfister. I think it's a big thing for Lacerda. Like the interconnectedness of every aspect of the game allows you to use your limited resource and find a way to like sort of like kick it down the field a little bit. Whereas maybe the person who just got 10 points like made their best decision, but if you can find a way to pick up an employee that turns the 6 points you just got into 6 more points. Now you've gotten 2 more points by making a decision that was a little more complicated. Uh, that wouldn't have panned out if you hadn't set it up nicely.
Hmm.
And I think that's something we should toy with once we have our gameplay. I don't think it's something to worry about now, but
Right.
ideally that's where I'd kind of like to see these sort of bonuses and contract cards going.
So I think some of that you'll see. So like this would be an example of like a level one setup here, or like a round one setup. So we go ahead, we put our workers out, we take our actions, we do the stuff, and then we figure out what the majorities are. And so round one is very simple. The way I imagine it, there would always be three hire an employee things shuffled in, and then three like instant bonuses probably. And so that would be an example of like what a round one might look like. And then round one and two have those type of things. And then I think that like once you start getting to the three and the four, I reckon that this would be interesting when you have different types of things like these bonuses, right? The
Ooh,
purchase one of these things here for $4 discount, or
yeah, bro.
instantly upgrade three of your storage cubes, or upgrade one of your factory tiles so that you get this on its instantly onto its nicer side, or whatever it may be. I think that some of that is going to come from this, which is good, because part of the point of having this very unique majorities mechanism is to make these very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I think genuinely one of the next things we should do is probably, I want to get this to a fairly playable point, right? Even if it's bad playable, but playable. I think that it's almost there. If we have a player board, if we have an idea of what the round structure is, and the first play of it that you and I do is going to be bad, but I think that's totally okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that as is with all of the pieces, I think we could do a trial round and see where the holes are that probably need the most attention. I think we'll figure out what the carts should be if we try and play a round or two of it and see, oh, it's actually completely useless because we never store things that much, or oh, this is a cute idea, but nothing actual like comes out of it in the execution of things. So
Right.
I think that's a logical next step. What about you?
I think so too, and I think that's something we should shoot for. Like a, I think we should. Obviously, like I'm not trying to put all the work on you because like you're the one who has already gone and like prototyped this game,
Hmm.
and I feel like, man, that's Chris really has gone like above and beyond here with
That's what I do.
this. Yeah. I'm trying to give myself a job. I guess I just need to think about these various aspects for. But like yeah, like next time I think we should maybe just try to mess around with the game.
Okay, let's do that. And then I think that'll help because one of your strengths is, as we've played through, for example, with the 100-day card game, the 100-day party. I think that as we played through it, you're good at pinpointing some of the things that need the refinement. Because I sit there and I nebulously say, this needs to be more exciting, or this needs to be more fun, or the scoring needs to change, and then you offer some really good specific criticisms. I think that that's maybe where the next step is, and that'll help you with your side.
Well, it's good. It's good that we're working on this together because I think you're right, and then I'm really bad at like the forest aspect of this stuff. But I feel like I'm pretty good at like looking at one tree. Um,
Cool.
but
Let's look at
uh,
some trees and cut them down and turn them into cubes.
yeah, speaking of which, to just wrap this thing up, I wanted to talk about it on the webisode we're doing today, whatever you want to call it, the vlogcast. And I've been playing this game called My Time at Porsche, which uh, I have on Switch, and it's really buggy and bad on Switch. But PlayStation Now just dropped it, and I subscribed to PlayStation Now because they have a bunch of weird like games that I would never pay money for that I want to play because I love playing weird games. Uh, my favorite one on there is this. The people who make Dynasty Warriors make this series of horse racing games where you like create a jockey, and the horse racing aspect of the game is really bad and really boring. But then there's like inter-jockey politics after every race, and you could like then like the owners of the stables will be like, "Hey, you're doing good. Like, can you race this horse next week?" And you'll be like, "I don't know." but, um, it's this game that's pretty similar. Like they took, I think, their love of like crafting games, like games like Minecraft has a big focus on crafting, like the new items and stuff you get. But like games before that, games after that. But like Harvest Moon also, where it's like a town simulation, and you have to like there's a social aspect. Anyway, you were saying you've never played Harvest Moon.
I've never have. That is correct. I've also never played an Animal Crossing or a lot of things that would surprise people, I guess.
Okay, I have a challenge for you this week. It's on literally every video game platform that exists. You should go figure out where Stardew Valley is the cheapest, and you should play it.
Oh, okay.
That is the modern like love letter to Harvest Moon, and it's great on mobile, but there's no multiplayer. If you get it on Switch or PC or whatever video game stuff you have, you can like use 2 copies of on the same platform to play together. Like if Wendy would want to play with you, and if you were to get it on like Switch or something, but like you didn't want to get 2 copies of it, split screen is coming in the next couple months. So, but the game has been out since 2016. The dude keeps updating it. It's like basically a one-man project, and I can't say enough good things about the game. It is right now, I would say, the ultimate farming sim / RPG town sim like game there is. It's super fun, super addictive. Go check it out. Tell me what you think. If I'm guessing the mobile version is probably under $5, and it's the exact same game. Just can't play multiplayer. So, but then like, well, I guess the PC or Switch version is like $15. So, but there you go.
Is it good enough of a game? The whole like farm simulator thing plus your horse jockey Porsche simulator thing, is that good enough that you would consider changing Galactic Empire Island to be a game about the political intrigues of a small town farming village?
I mean, yeah, that would actually be really cool. But I do think it is maybe I think it's one of the most, if not the most worthwhile game on a broad level for every person to play in the last 5 years for sure.
Stardew Valley specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it appeals to everybody is what I'm saying. Like, it appeals to non-gamers, it appeals to gamers, it appeals to casual gamers, it appeals to hardcore gamers. It's just a very fun game.
Interesting.
And its lifespan, to me, is a lot longer than Animal Crossing. Because, like, Animal Crossing is, like, the wall of, like, I've done kind of everything is really early in the... I mean, like, you play it for, like, 100 days, but you might play for, like, an hour a day or less. And, like, it's really just a lot of running around being like, oh, this animal said the exact same thing. Like, you have that in Harvest Moon, too, but you can progress or not progress as quickly as you want because it's a save file instead. It's not real time.
Okay.
But, like, the game, the stuff you do is rote and samey, but there's a ton of content, and like the different stuff you do like can be completely ignored if you really want to, or not, like if you don't like fishing in Harvest or in Animal Crossing, like you're missing out on a big part of it. I guess, I don't know. Some of the similar stuff is there, but go check it out. Go check it out is what I'm saying. If you hate it, I'll refund you.
All right, man.
If you love it and you get it on anything that's not phone, I'll play it with you.
Okay, well, I'll figure it out, man.
All right.
Appreciate the challenge.
But you don't have to take my word for it, LeVar Burton. All right. Anyway.
All right, man. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up our stream for the day with a challenge, and then with the plan. So for next week, we'll try to play, as terrible as it may be, we'll try and play this prototype of C&C Color Cube Factory.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, perfect, man.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Cam. Dabba Labba Cam Com. And
That's me. Dabbing out.
all right, man. Have a good
All right.
one and enjoy playing. What did you say it was going to be?
My time at Porsche, which is what I'm going back to before we do the podcast tonight. So.
No, what are you playing with the board boys tonight?
Barrage.
Barrage, yes. Enjoy playing Barrage with them, with the Barrage boys.
Yeah, I will. And good to see you. And I guess we won't have a Meeple Over Board Boys podcast on this one.
Nope, fortunately not. All right, with
That's
that,
okay.
we're out.
Hey, good to see you.